Hello everyone, I'm Wendell Jones and welcome to this edition of the program Jones and Company. On this program we examine national issues. For the past few days people have been talking about the agreement between the government of the Bahamas and Cable and Wireless and the BTC, operation of BTC in the Bahamas. And the government of the Bahamas, headed by Prime Minister Perry Christie, announced this past week on the 22nd of January that the government of the Bahamas has now the majority economic interest in BTC. That interest rests with the Bahamian people. On our program today, we are going to go into all aspects of this new arrangement, and our guest on the program today is the chairman of the negotiating committee on the government side, Mr. Franklyn Wilson, who is the chairman of Sunshine Holdings. And Mr. Wilson was joined by Mr. Sean McQueenie, Rowena Bethel, and Mr. Leon Williams. So it's our delight, our pleasure to have Mr. Wilson as our guest on the program today. Mr. Wilson, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Godfrenius, nice to have you here today.
Thank you.
And you come armed with all your questions. Thank you so much.
I got a few.
You have a few. Franklyn Wilson, this has become a little controversial over the last several days. I host the Issues of the Day program, and I was hard-pressed with a number of the callers who perhaps misunderstood what the government did. You were the chairman of the negotiating committee representing the government side. I'm sure you are happy with what you have achieved. But for starters, explain to the Bahamian people what you really did, what you achieved.
We have transformed the BTC into what it has never ever been. Into a company majority owned by the people of the Bahamas, with a private sector manager, with new protocols to ensure higher standards of performance, higher commitment to improving service levels, with new protocols to help in the fight on crime, with new protocols to help transform the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, and while doing all that, created a new foundation to help energize a lot of private sector opportunities or public opportunities in 3 specific areas. Those are just some of the things that have been accomplished. Now that, to me, I mean, I've heard all the comments, but I honestly believe this is a case where once the facts are known, it is very difficult in my view to not see this as a very rare and significant win for a country called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
I came here armed with the statement of the Prime Minister as well as the Leader of the Opposition.
Yes.
The leader of the Opposition says this is a worse deal than the Bahamian people had under the Free National Movement. How do you respond to that?
Well, the first thing I would say is he will have an opportunity when a parliamentary committee with power to send for persons and paper is appointed to explain why he personally supported the transaction, which was horrendous by any measure, by any possible measure.
Why do you call it horrendous?
Because once the public know the facts, they will see. It was a government that acted with great impropriety. I noticed the leader of the opposition seeks to establish that the fact that I said that I did not seek to implicate Cable and Wireless. He seeks to convince the Bahamian public that I said, or I meant, that I gave the then government, quote, a clean bill of health. Nothing could be further from the truth. If that was the truth, I would not have been a part of the group recommending the parliamentary committee. The fact that you act in a way that is improper, it doesn't implicate me, even though I'm dealing with you. You're the one. I mean, if you open the back door and tell me, you come through here, you, and once I get inside, you don't just entertain me, you've given me the seat of honor. What's wrong with that? I haven't done nothing wrong. You take me in. You say, just don't come to the front, come to the back.
So
That's just an example.
Yes. You are now saying that the Ingram administration operated improperly in the consummation of the sale of BTC. I need you to be specific in that regard. What did they do that they should not have done?
They should not have sold BTC for what they did, on the terms that they did, in the manner that they did, and the public, through this public inquiry, will find out what I mean. But allow me, if you would, Mr. Jones, to get back, because I have looked very carefully at what the leader of the opposition really had to say. I've prepared some notes, because I want to be accurate. The leader of the opposition is quoted as saying, after promising on the campaign trail to regain the majority of the shares in BTC, the Prime Minister tried to create the illusion that he had delivered a new deal. This is no illusion. This is no illusion. He's beginning to sound like the former Prime Minister, talking about, what is that thing? Holograms. There's no hologram. Those shares are real. The fact of the matter is, Cable and Wireless today owns 49, or once this deal is, all the paperwork is formally done, which is to be concluded on or before March 31st. Once that is formally concluded, Cable and Wireless will own 49% of the shares of BTC.
Just over 49%.
Just over 49%.
49 point.
Plus 80 shares. 49 plus 001 or whatever the case it is. Okay. That's not an illusion. That's reality.
Why they went over the 49? The point, whatever it is. See, why that?
See, let me. I'll come back to that. But just allow me to just stay a little longer with what the leader of the opposition had to say, if you don't mind. Okay. Secondly, he said that the Prime Minister had not delivered what he promised. Well, the fact of the matter is, the mandate, when the Prime Minister appointed our committee, we obviously asked, what is our mandate? He referred us to the PLP's Charter for Governance, which outlined what he ran on. This is what he told the Bahamian people. And the Charter for Government says that it would review and renegotiate the BTC transaction. Well, we have renegotiated the BTC transaction. That's not an illusion. That's real. In terms of the review, we have begun the review and taken it as far as we could without the powers of an inquiry. So we said, continue that review through a parliamentary committee only if it has powers to send for persons and papers. Understand this. A lot of people may not understand. A parliamentary committee with powers to send for persons and papers means literally what it says. Bring the paper.
Yeah.
And you can't tell me nothing, but I don't want to come, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of implications. So on that point, number one, the leader of the opposition is just wrong. Okay? It is no illusion. And the mandate that we as a committee followed was consistent with the Charter for Governance, which was given to us as our brief.
Yeah, but just the question is, why more than 49%? Whatever the fraction of the percentage is.
The reason for that is this. The 0.000 is the mechanism by which Cable and Wireless exercises the control in terms of non-economic interests. Okay? In terms of the political, see, in every shares in a company, there's economic interest and there's legal and political, what I call political interest. Okay? So that 0.000 is a mechanism for ensuring the political interests. Okay? But let me go further.
Is that to satisfy what they do outside the country?
No. It has to do with the fact that the 2% of the shares that the government acquired are non-voting shares.
Why non-voting shares?
They are non-voting shares because the fundamental reason for that is Cable and Wireless made it clear to us. If we continue to press that point, that was a line in the sand. It would have required the government to do certain things, just for that one right, just for that. Okay? It would have required us to breach long decades of public policy in this country against expropriation and nationalization of private property. That's point number one. Two, it would have required us to pay $100 million if we had done it within the first year, $80 million in the second year, and $40 million in the third year. These are provisions that the former government put in the contract, and I do not understand why that was in the national interest. It was like our team negotiating for the other side. I am going to give you a stick to hit my players with. That's what they did. That's what they did. I don't see how that makes sense. Also, too, just to give you an example, okay? People talk about the quality of service. Look, when you give the management contract to a private sector company, isn't it reasonable to say, if you don't meet certain standards, I have certain recourse? It's not unreasonable. It's not unreasonable. Yes, you run the place, but you got to meet certain standards.
You never sought management control of BTC?
No, never did. That was never part of our brief.
Okay.
It was never part of our brief.
But you would have been interested in controlling the board. But you could not control the board given the penalties involved.
See, I hear people making this distinction. I don't know what that means. I'm involved in tons of companies. The fact of the matter is, management control and board control, what's the difference? I don't know. Maybe someone could explain it. I've heard some commentators, including some politicians, explain that, and some are lawyers. Maybe they could help me understand that.
Well,
to me, Wendall, the board of directors are, outside of the shareholders, the management. The board of directors are the management, outside of the shareholders. So I don't know, people are making this distinction. I saw Mr. Bernard Evans making a distinction that he never expected to get management control, but he thought he'd get board control. How do you get one without the other?
Okay.
There's no such thing.
Godfrey?
Mr. Wilson, how were you able to get Cable and Wireless to agree to the loss of the monopoly?
Or, but let me put it this way, if you don't mind me putting it this way. How do we, everyone's asking me, see, I tell you what is the big problem with this agreement, right? Oh, gentlemen, the big problem with this is people keep saying, this looks too good to be true. And if it looks too good to be true, that old mantra, chances are it's not true. But I want people to understand, it is true. Yes. Firstly, we do have the shares. Yes, the shares, based on what an analyst in London has said, are worth $25 million. Based on what our capital markets say, if you were to value CableBahamas on the same basis, the shares are worth closer to $50 million. Okay? So people don't understand why, how did we get these people to part with $25 to $50 million of value? And the Prime Minister says we paid nothing. So I think there are a lot of people having problems coming to accept that. Okay? But I want to be aiming people to understand that is the truth. Now, Now, it is no illusion, okay? How did it happen? Why did they do that? When, gentlemen, this didn't happen quickly. It took patience. It took time, okay? I want the public to understand just how far we've come to have achieved this. Firstly, when you know how many schools we could build with $50 million? You know how many clinics we could build? You know how many roads we could pave? I mean, this is real money. This is no hologram or whatever you call it. This is real. This is real. Okay? So the fact of the matter is, I want the public to understand, when we started these negotiations with Cable and Wireless, the first meeting we had over at the Cove Hotel, I think it was, or one of those hotels, because we wanted to be a degree of privacy that no one had a sense as to where we were and so on and so forth. These people were in total denial about service standards. That's how far we were. When we talked about this, why you all want this? Why is this important? They never understood. A senior director of the company says, yes, we're having some drop calls, but we're getting a piece of equipment coming in next week or week after next, and by January of that year, drop calls will be a thing of the past. That's what we were told. They had no idea. And he was genuine. When I said that I believe the Cable and Wireless, I've come to trust that. I honestly believe he was not pretending. He wasn't pretending. That was his view.
Let's go back up.
Yes.
Why was it necessary in the first place for the government of the Bahamas to acquire 2%?
Firstly, Wendell, it was not just, firstly, we have the economic point, so that when you have the economic majority of something, that's yours. It's a big difference. That ain't psychological, that's real. That's real. As a result of having that, we have made changes to management processes at 3 levels. At 3 different levels. Firstly, at the office of the chairman. I mentioned earlier that in a company, the board of directors, that's management. But when you say chairman, it means chairman of the board. So a major role that a chairman plays in a company is to set the agenda for the meeting.
Who will be the chairman of the board?
Mr. Philip, the Cable and Wireless guy. Okay?
Mr. Bentley.
Bentley, okay?
Okay.
However, Mr. Bentley has agreed to appoint to the office of the chairman a Bahamian, skilled and knowledgeable about telecommunications, understanding national interest in the Bahamas, so that before things go to the board, it has been sensitized with a degree of Bahamian awareness and perspective before it gets to the board. That's the first change. That's not window dressing. That's not an illusion. That is real. That's a major change. Okay? 2, once it gets to the board, we have created a pathway where by the time this thing is finished, the majority of the board will be citizens of the Bahamas. The majority of the board will be citizens. The fact that one will be appointed by Cable and Wireless doesn't take away the fact. In fact, we think this augurs well for the future stability of the company.
So how many board members you would have?
9.
And how many Bahamians?
4, 5.
5 Bahamians?
5.
Okay.
Assuming as long as the government appoints all their 4 Bahamians, as long as the government appoints their 4 Bahamians, we will ensure, that mechanism will ensure that 5 are Bahamian citizens.
So
now,
Bahamian citizens will comprise the majority of the board.
On the board. And my point is the fact that one would be appointed by Cable and Wireless is not a negative. We operate on the basis that the extent that there are national interests involved, Bahamians will, that one director there will talk to his other 4 colleagues from Cable and Wireless, say, you know, man, the other side got a point. Okay. They're not flamming, they got a point. Good. Okay? I ended this prayer. I know you're going to break. It's really, it's like, to some extent, you know, it's similar to, like, the Office of Governor General in a sense. The fact is, today, the Governor General was not appointed by the current Prime Minister, but he's serving in mighty distinction. Because there's something called national interest. There has nothing to do with what party you support.
Yeah. Let's take this break here, and when we return, we'd like to talk about this foundation that was established. This is Jones and Company. We take this break, we'll come right back. We're back here on Jones and Company, and today we are discussing the so-called historic agreement that was struck last week between the government of the Bahamas and Cable and Wireless. Godfrey News?
Mr. Wilson, how did this whole procedure or negotiation process factor into the Cable and Wireless overall global framework? We're dealing with a global company here. And here it is, this little 2x4 country, the Bahamas, is able to get this giant.
Well, let me put it this way. Very good question. The chairman himself spoke to this at the signing, pointing out the fact that he himself had assumed office on January 1st. And within that period of time, he'd been to the Bahamas 3 times. 3 times. Now, if you're CEO of a company that is largest
Global, yeah.
Clearly you would not go to a market like this 3 times in your first month in office unless you thought this was important. So that is considerable evidence as to just how important this, our business is to Cable and Wireless. Very important.
Yeah.
And that's why, for the benefit of everyone who wants to know, why we could not get the voting rights was because basically Cable and Wireless would say, listen, you would have to expropriate it. I offered the man, I said, listen man, we'll buy you out. We'll double your money and pay the penalty that the former government said you have to pay. We'll double your money and pay the penalty if you would leave. Why, Mr. Wilson? Why? He said, listen, people say they're not satisfied with the service and so on and so forth. Offer the man, double your money.
Is that what you proposed?
I said, we'll double your money.
Yeah.
And pay the penalty. And the man says, no. That tells you how sweet this is. It also tells you how sweet a deal they got.
But as a negotiator, you were calling this bluff as well.
Well, let me put it this way. You know, the fellow always going to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
He always going to say yes. And I can tell you this, Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Before I said that,
Mm-hmm.
I made some calls in the capital markets around town to satisfy myself that getting the money would not have been a problem.
Yeah, you are dropping your microphone,
Yeah.
so let's
I'm
sort
just
you out.
telling you, I didn't just say that in bluff.
Mm-hmm.
I called some friends in the capital markets and says, listen, if this opportunity came about on these terms, could we get the money?
But let me ask you a follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
What is BTC worth now?
I have no idea. All I know is that if you're making $80 million, it's worth a hell. Let's put it this way. It's worth more.
Than they paid for it?
No, just more than that. It's worth sufficient that the man could say no to an offer to double your money and we pay the penalty. So in their mind, it's worth more than that. It either says one of 2 things. It says we got this so cheap
Right.
that doubling our money
Ain't enough.
and paying the penalty ain't enough.
Yeah.
So it was a major giveaway as far as you're concerned.
Well, you know, I expressed it in terms of it was a horrendous deal.
Mr. Wilson, the government of the Bahamas is establishing a foundation, is it?
Yes, sir.
For this 2%
Yes.
to be of the dividends to be
Yes.
deposited and handled
Yes.
by this foundation.
Yes.
Would this be a BTC foundation, or would it be a foundation of the government of the Bahamas?
Very good question, Mr. Jones, because I think if the public understand this will clarify a lot of the stuff and the noise. To answer your question very clearly, BTC would have nothing to do with the founding of that, or the control over it, is clearly, decidedly in the hands of the government. The government will appoint, without question, the overriding, they will control that, no question about that. In addition, I have reason to believe that some lawyers who are partial to the opposition of the day has been saying they want to know who is the founder of the foundation, because the founder, under the law, the founder of the foundation may have certain rights to dissolve the foundation. I want to be in public to know Cable and Wireless has nothing to do with the founding of this foundation. This is a Bahamian thing.
Was the foundation a negotiating tool, or was the foundation a mechanism to retrieve the 2%?
It was both, so to speak. The foundation achieved had a purpose for both sides. It allowed Cable and Wireless to continue, if the government had taken it in its own name, Cable and Wireless would not have been able to account for it the way they can now. They're 49%. They can account for their 49% through an accounting principle called consolidation. Now, Bahamians who do a lot of borrowing, consumer loans, they have heard the term consolidation. Okay, so it will allow them to use this principle of consolidation. It don't matter to us. You own 49%. How you account for your 49%, that's your business. From our point of view, it meant new revenue. How we got it to the Treasury in terms of how we control it and all the rest of it, hey, whether I take it out of this pocket or take it out of that pocket, what difference does it make?
So Cable and Wireless had to agree to the establishment of this foundation in order for the deal to be consummated?
Yes, it was a mutual agreement. Yeah, it was a part of the negotiation.
Okay.
Right,
Good.
it's part of the negotiation.
Now,
and the point I'm making is, but I want the public to know there's no doubt the purposes are predetermined by the government, have been predetermined by the government. It is controlled by the government. The Foundation Council is being formed by the government. The Foundation Council managing this will be appointed by the government. And there's no way Cable and Wireless could ever dissolve this. It can't happen.
they have no influence over this foundation.
They could give their point of view, whatever the case it is, because they have some resources. But the control of this is a Bahamian thing. Now, let me tell you something else. In addition to that, Cable and BTC has issued a statement of its own, making it clear they have no control over this foundation. Also, to making it clear that the head of the union and the head of the DNA and one or two other commentators are just dead wrong when they, in effect, say or imply or suggest that this foundation is no more than, instead of sending the letter for something to BTC, you send it to the foundation. That is absolutely nothing further from the truth. And I am pleased that BTC has issued its own statement, making it clear that their expenditure on marketing and promotion, including charitable donations, is totally independent of this. To those persons who have any doubt, just think logically. A year from now, BTC is going to be operating in an environment of competition. Why would I spend more when I have no competition in cellular lines than I spend when I have competition?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not logical.
Yeah, the question...
That you would cut your marketing expense, including charitable donations, after the competition comes.
But the question arises, what would be the significance of this deal? And would it really make a difference if there is significant competition in the cellular market? Because it is envisaged that in the cellular market, that the revenue of BTC will decline appreciably.
Well, the truth of the matter is, I do not know all the reasons why BTC agreed to this deal. I don't know all. But logic suggests that what you're saying gives us a clue as to their thinking. The fact of the matter is they have to position this company as a real deal. It's in their interest for this to be what we say it is. It's in their interest, okay? Because competition is coming. They know that. They're trying to prepare for it, which makes the point that those who are saying that their charitable donations and marketing costs will reduce. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to anticipate that. Okay? But let me go back to a point, Mr. Jones, that is very important, and it relates to the third thing about management that has changed. Just as BTC is important to Cable and Wireless, BTC is important to us. So we have put in this understanding twice a year at the shareholder levels. The chairman of Cable and Wireless and the prime minister, not the minister responsible, the prime minister will meet. Now just think about the implications of that, okay? Don't you think that when they meet, the prime minister is going to be talking to him about service standards? Don't you think the prime minister is aware of the fact that this man said we're going to spend $150 million improving the product in the next 3 years? When they meet, don't you think the prime minister would say, okay, how much of that 150 you spent? What did you spend it on? What's the benefit? How's it working? Okay? These are questions we could reasonably anticipate. Let me mention to you something else, Wendall. I'll tell you something. When BTC was being sold, there were voices in the community who were saying that an unfortunate aspect of that transaction was insufficient ground was given to the question of national security and crime. Now let's stay on that for a minute, because the public needs to understand this. A few weeks ago when I was having discussions with one of the representatives from Cable and Wireless, who happens to be from Jamaica, was making the point that just that day in Jamaica, there was a very high-profile murder case. Very high-profile murder case. And the police had what appeared to be a pretty strong case. But a problem came because one of the telephone providers had not followed certain protocols in terms of maintaining evidence in a form satisfactory for courts. And I don't know the outcome of the case, but that was likely to be a material factor. Now, I don't want to go to great lengths on this point for obvious reasons, but I want the public to know that this transaction is very relevant to the fight on crime.
Yeah. And
when the Prime Minister meets with the Chairman of Cable and Wireless every 6 months, we put it at that level for precise reasons. For precise reasons. No one else needs to know what they are talking. This is the national interest of the Bahamas. So if certain things leak, the Prime Minister could say, well, man, you must be talking this. You know, who could have talked it? Only you and I were here. So the relevance of this to crime is very, very significant.
You mentioned also earlier that there would be an advisor to the chairman.
Yes.
This advisor to the chairman is to the chairman who can meet with the prime minister.
Yes.
And that chairman, that advisor, will he be a Bahamian?
Yes.
Given
so that works two ways. That works two ways. It works to the benefit of Cable and Wireless, and it works to the chairman, to the government. Because now, suppose the Prime Minister or the Minister responsible for telecommunications, or even forget that, even if it's the Attorney General, wants to communicate something to BTC in the strictest of confidence, they now have another vehicle with which to get that point to the right people. That's not a joking position.
Yeah.
Okay? So what I'm saying to you is, Mr. Jones, this point about the relationship to crime fighting is huge.
Yeah, but I hear that point. But given what you have achieved with Cable and Wireless, whatever competition comes up would be placed at a great disadvantage, Mr. Wilson. Privatization is one thing, liberalization of the market is another.
Right.
If you have other carriers interested in telephony in the Bahamas,
Okay.
they would be at a great disadvantage given this agreement that was struck.
We for the Bahamas. We not for the other fella. We for the Bahamas. We said this is our standards. We want you to come. We want you to compete. But these are our standards. So presumably this is the platform for which we're going to talk. These are our standards. See, we are negotiating for the Bahamas. We're not negotiating for the other side. We're negotiating for the Bahamas. That's our interest. So whoever comes, these are our standards. And let me go further, Mr. Jones, in this regard. Not only did I talk about the question of national security, but I'm very pleased to be able to advise that, look, when BTC was being sold, there were voices who were saying, look, man, technology is moving in a direction where the division between telephone and television is narrowing. It's narrowing. Okay?
Mr. Wilson.
So just
Hold on.
Just let me finish, okay? So the fact as BTC develops more and more capacity with telephones, an inevitable byproduct of that is they are developing more capacity for television. So we have, as part of this arrangements, set protocols in place where the Broadcasting Corporation will be able to piggyback on and benefit from some of that.
Yeah, but is that fair? Is that fair? Isn't that wrong in a liberalized market where you have other private television stations?
Yes.
Aren't you giving the government of the Bahamas giving an unfair advantage to ZNS?
Let me pause. No, I understand your point. You don't have to go further.
No, I can
no,
go.
No, I understand your point, okay? Understand this. There's nothing in the protocols which prevent those benefits, which are being available to the Broadcasting Corporation, being made available to others as well. I must confess, I did not specifically focus on that in our negotiations, but I can't think of anything in the protocol which would prevent it. My point is, I believe now, for example, Jones Communications is a private television station. From time to time, you do access some of the resources of BTC. Am I not right? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So nothing exists for us to accelerate that. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because it is a point that prior to March 31st that we should take into account. And we continue to have very good relationships with the people at Cable and Wireless. And that's something which I will make due note of. And we'll see. We'll see what's possible. I take the point.
As a follow-up to that question, right?
Yes, sir.
Right now, Cable and Wireless, or BTC,
Yeah.
is first out of the block. When competition comes in, suppose the competition erodes BTC's market share to the point where the competition has a bigger market than BTC.
Well, Mr. Ineas, it's what I just said. Whoever comes, these are our standards. Why should we?
Yeah, but wouldn't that water down the government's importance in the telecommunications sector?
It depends on what the arrangements are with the competitors. Nothing in the protocol prevents the government from being in with someone else. This ain't something where you only could have one wife.
Yeah, but the situation is the situation.
You understand what I'm saying to you?
No, but the
nothing
situation
in the protocol says the government can only have one wife.
Yeah, but the situation for the government having one wife stems from the fact, right, that the government was the sole owner.
No.
Right,
no.
With competition coming in.
No, I'm saying to you is, I'm talking about the impact of this particular memorandum of understanding
Yeah.
All I'm saying to you is nothing in this protocol changes. In other words, we did not put in here any new provision which would prevent, which was not in the original shareholders agreement, which in any way undermines the rights of the government. We were negotiating for the government and people of the Bahamas. We're not negotiating for cable and wireless or any competitor to come. We're negotiating the position of whoever comes. You said these are our standards.
Okay, you have to take another break here. This is Jones and Company. We take this break, we'll come right back. Here we are in the final segment of our program, Jones and Company, speaking with Mr. Franklyn Wilson today, who was the chief negotiator for this new deal between Cable and Wireless and the government of the Bahamas. How long did it take to conclude this? You said just over a year?
More. I mean, we were appointed, I think, in about July or something. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
We lost about 3 or 4 months because, quite frankly, Cable and Wireless were raising all sorts of things about conflicts of interest and this and that. And so it took us a while to clear a lot of hurdles. Our first meeting was January of 2000, after the election. But the after election.
Was there any acrimony in all of this?
Well, let me put it this way. The public, the Bahamian public would know, find it interesting to know that this was sufficiently important that the British government caused its High Commissioner, resident in the UK, to pay me a personal visit. And he was making the point about, why this and that and so on and so forth. And there's a bit of a tidbit, Mr. Jones, that the Bahamian public might find interesting. So much went into this. It so happens that the day the British High Commissioner came to see me and was raising the point about, the UK government. So it was like, this is stick, if you all do something crazy, the UK government here might do something. It was, I'm not saying he threatened me, but I'm just saying to you is, you have to be pretty naive not to understand what he was saying.
Yeah.
Okay? But let me make this one point, sorry, if you don't mind. It was interesting that among the things I was able to say, and I say thank you very much, but I want you to do me a favor, please. I'm not sure I've fully convinced the cable and wireless people as to just how the Bahamian people feel about the quality of service. I would appreciate if you would do me a favor and the Bahamian people a favor by going back to your government and tell them that the Bahamian people feel very strongly about it. And as evidence, I would wish you to take this letter, which appears in the daily newspaper, written by a lady who's a former Governor General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, happened to have been Dame Ivy. Now she would have had no idea when she was penning that letter. Dame Ivy was essentially saying, we shouldn't put up with this quality service. And I was able to make the point. Your government would appreciate Dame Ivy, a former representative of Her Majesty the Queen, would not be some idle rabbit-haired radical just making noise. For her to decide that this was worthy enough and important enough for her to write this letter. Please do me a favor, take this to your government.
What do you
understand the point?
I hear your point, but
Yeah.
And there are some people who talk about the abrogation of agreements made, and that successive governments should stand on the agreements of the preceding government.
And we have. The beauty of this is we have. If we hadn't, we'd have had to pay the penalty. We would have had to pay the penalty. The beauty about this is we have. And also the beauty about this, we got whether it's $25 or $50 million, let other people debate it. No question about that, that's what we got. The leader of the opposition say we got nothing, we got that. We got the fact that access to capacity to improve private broadcasting in the country, we got that. That's real. And that's going to save the corporation 7-figure money again. We got that. I even haven't put no dollar value on that. We got the fact about national security protocols. We got these things. This is real. So we got all this, Mr. Jones. We got all this in a way where You know, one of the head negotiator for Cable and Wireless said to me at the end, in fact, he said it when it's at the signing, in the presence of the Prime Minister and others. He says, you know, Mr. Prime Minister, in a way, I'm sorry these talks have ended. Because I've come to enjoy them. Coming to the Bahamas is pleasant enough. I've come to enjoy them. In other words, the degree of civility and cordiality with which they've been conducted was such that he wished, and from that point of view, that they were going on.
Based on what you were saying, you have concluded that the initial agreement, the initial sales agreement, was woefully inadequate.
Woefully inadequate. Woefully so. Woefully so. And the opposition, the government, the now opposition will have an opportunity, I pray, through this parliamentary committee, to present another perspective.
So to reiterate what you were saying is that you, in effect, renegotiated the deal.
There's no question. Not me, our committee.
Yeah, your team.
Okay?
Your team, yeah.
And in this regard, let me say something. I'm so glad you said that. A part of why we accomplished this was really the combination of people the Prime Minister put together. Having on a committee like this, Sean McQueenie, Rowena Bethel. This is the first time I've worked with Rowena. You know, man, I feel so good. Rowena Bethel is just so committed, so patriotic, so, you know, I mean, just a really strong person. Okay? I really believe the people at National Insurance have a leader there that can make a difference. Very knowledgeable. And Leon Williams, of course, when we got to technical things. Leon knows everything. I mean, everything about telecommunications and so on and so forth, he knows it. So the Prime Minister put together a wonderful team. I'll tell you this much, again, for the records. And I'm not going to betray confidences in details, but one of the negotiators said to us, he said, you know, I must tell you, he said it again, Wednesday night, in the front of others, so I can say these things because I'm not the only one. No, I'm not betraying confidences. He said, 10 minutes into our first meeting, 10 minutes into our first meeting, he realized that this was a different crew.
A different
I
crew.
did not say that. That's what he said. 10 minutes into our first meeting, he said, this is a different crew. Now, he can decide what that means.
Yeah.
But all I'm telling you is,
That's what he said.
that's what he said.
Yeah.
The opposition makes some hay on the fact that the funds from the 2% gain would not be deposited in the consolidated fund. And the 49% of the share, the dividends from 49% would go to the public treasury or the consolidated fund. Is that an essential
Mr.
point?
Jones, someone gives me money. I put it in this pocket.
Yeah.
You give me some money, I put it in this pocket.
Still your money. What difference it make?
I mean, it's like finding, it's like they're trying to find something to say.
Yeah.
See, the opposition on this matter so far finds themselves in a position where they have to find something to say. They have to find something to say. And so they come with that. That you put it in the right pocket, not the left pocket? Come on, man.
Franklyn Wilson, the negotiations went well, you say. You say that a representative of the British government came to see you.
Yes.
Did you have any conversation whatsoever with the former Prime Minister, Mr. Ingram, or people from the former government with respect to your negotiating this?
No, there was no, but let's put it straight. The answer to the question is no. We did not meet with the former Prime Minister. We met with the advisors. KPMG were the advisors to the government through the process. And the main thing for us at this point, we weren't interested in just, I think. We needed to thoroughly understand the agreement. We needed to thoroughly understand the agreement. And KPMG was very helpful to us in that regard to make sure we thoroughly understood the agreement. Because, to be quite candid with you, and Cable and Wireless would know this, our first approach was to exhaust every possible avenue for breach. we went looking for breach. How could we get out of this? How could we were looking for ammunition. What did Cable and Wireless do that could possibly have constituted a breach? And we went and got some in addition to having Mr. McQueenie there and Rowena Bethel, two very competent attorneys, we got other points of view as well to make sure, looking for breach. But the government, the former government, had created such a low fence.
Couldn't find no breach?
You know, a low fence.
A low fence for Cable and Wireless.
That's the point.
I
mean, it was such a low fence.
What did you find, Mr. Wilson, or what did your team find the most difficult aspect of this negotiation?
Well, the most difficult aspect of this was to convey to Cable and Wireless that we were serious, that this was not just a frivolous matter, for them to develop confidence that we were intending to be respectful of their positions, to make sure that we did not act in a way where they could feel motivated to start playing the one card they had. The biggest card they had was to start playing the card about we are destroying investor confidence. See, that's the card they had. So we had to, at all times, walk in such a way where they would not play that card.
Do you think...
Because if they played that card, we were going to be in a tough position. I mean, it's sort of like, in fact, I could tell you, see, this year, I brought this here for a thing. This was the Tribune of May 15th, 2012. Headline in the business section. Government warned, don't renegotiate the deal. And all this here basically says, what hell and damnation would happen if you tried that? That's what this article basically said. And so what I'm saying to you is, if the government had taken this advice, we would have gotten all these benefits that we talked about. All these benefits that we talked about, no illusion, Mr. Lee, the opposition, real benefits.
Yeah. Since you mentioned the Tribune, they came out with a headline saying no control for government in BTC deal. You never sought a control.
Let me make this point.
Did you seek control?
No, we never did. In fact, let me make this point for the records. Okay? The day on Wednesday, on Tuesday, the Tribune came out with a headline about face-saving deal. That was the headline on Wednesday. Okay? We suspected that was setting the stage for exactly what happened. See, that theme has been picked up by ministers and the leader of the opposition and everybody else. Like, pick up what the Tribune had to say. So, I personally sought to persuade the Tribune, or one of the editors, the business editors of the Tribune, that really they could do the country a favor. He asked me some questions, and it was clear that he did not have the full facts. He did not have the full facts. And I also knew that very deliberately, out of fear of leaks, we didn't put certain things in certain versions of the agreement. So even if he had something, it would not have been possible to have something that reflected the totality of our understanding on Tuesday. So I'm saying to him, I saw it, okay, to persuade them that, look, this thing about face saving, that mantra, that approach wasn't constructive. I mean, we don't want to turn the Tribune into a tabloid. You understand? So, but that was not in their favor, and they said, look, we will run with what we have. And if you look at it, that set the tone, you see. See, everything else is just basically picking up what the Tribune said, not Wednesday, but Tuesday. That was when the damage was done, I think, in my opinion.
Mr. Wilson, it's obviously based on what you just said, that Cable and Wireless may have somewhere felt that this was a political cavalier reaction by the Progressive Liberal Party seeking office to look for a way to renegotiate the contract, and they didn't take it seriously. Is that a fair assumption?
Well, let me put it this way. Cable and wireless, in the records, on the records that we saw, this was discussed. Cable and wireless discussed this with the former government. And Cable and wireless on the record is saying, we used to these things. And they quoted how we did this in Mauritius or some other places. You know, we accept that, you know, opposition parties take positions.
Yeah.
That was helpful to us, though, because Cable and wireless, because we saw a written record establishing that.
Of other countries.
Of their position.
Yeah.
Of their position. It took away any chance of them saying that we ambushed them.
Two quick questions, Mr. Wilson, before we end the show.
Yes.
Are you satisfied that Cable and Wireless, given their record in the Caribbean, is a worthy partner for the government of the Bahamas? Because there has been some criticism of their record in the region. Are you satisfied that this is a worthy partner for the government of the Bahamas?
For us at this stage, the question is academic, and I tell you why. The former government gave us the hand, it's been dealt. Two, they signed an agreement with such a low fence, that we can't do anything about it. So whether they are or not, it's academic at this stage. The comment I made on Wednesday evening was that I found, not having been a party to all the prior story of Cable and Wireless and so on and so forth, I found the people with whom I negotiated, and we negotiated, I found over a period of time that they never told us anything that they spoke their word on, and we found that they were honorable people, and then we went through the records, and we found no evidence that they had done anything improper. We found plenty of evidence that our government had done a lot of things improper.
Yeah.
But we didn't find anything that they'd done anything improper.
Yeah. My final question to you is after the consummation of the deal and the announcement last Wednesday, did you anticipate the kind of public reaction that you have? Because, Mr. Wilson, there are some people in media who are hard-pressed to explain the situation to the Bahamian people. So the question is, what do you make of public reaction to what has been done?
Two things. Firstly, the Tribune story of Tuesday said it was like fertilizer in the ground. That's the first point. Okay? So it gave legitimacy to this idea about face saving and no difference and all that type of talk. So that was unfortunate and incorrect. Secondly, respect for the parliamentary process created a problem because the public still does not have the document because the Prime Minister says he's obliged to first lay it on Parliament. So the fact of the matter is the leader of the opposition could say these things,
But I don't see the document.
but no one could challenge it. And he presumably has not seen it. So he could just seek to make hay out of what he heard someone, like, for example, the fact that I said that Cable and Wireless, I did not in my remarks implicate Cable. He could extrapolate from that I said the F&M was so perfect and so wonderful and so on and so forth. But once the document gets on the floor of Parliament, I think that'll make a difference. And I think hopefully programs like this will help to make a difference. And let me say this point, Mr. Jones. I don't, as you end, I want the public to please understand, for us on this committee, this was never a partisan political divide. This was national service. We weren't paid for this. This was about national service. This was sacrifice. This actually cost the people money. Everyone on the committee, it cost them money. Okay? But there comes a time where every so often some good things happen in this country. Some good things happen.
This is one of them.
And this is one of them. Yeah. And rather than the politicians reacting on the basis of our traditional thing has been that, you know, I can't acknowledge that the other side could do one thing good.
Yeah.
They can't do one thing good. So sometimes it's good for a government to say, you know, to some extent, you know, I like it. I liken it to some extent. It's not an exact parallel, but But I remember when Mr. Kersner did one of his announcements or something or other. What did debate become? Debate became who brought Mr. Kersner here? Was it the other? You see my point? Yeah. Instead of discussing, you know, is
the
this
positives?
Yeah. So
Is this
my
good
point
for the country?
It's good for the
in
country.
national interest?
Yeah. So my point is that again in this debate, who brought Mr. Kersner?
Yeah.
That's one. This is to me. This is like that.
Yeah.
In terms of the principle, the principle is look. This committee started with nothing. Nothing. They got all these benefits I've talked about. It cost the government nothing. Nothing. So where's the loss? How could Mr. Minister possibly say this worse than what the F&M did? How could that possibly be? I mean, that can't possibly have a degree of credibility. I mean, it cost the country nothing. And one guy says you got directly the shares worth 25. Someone else say more like 50. Well, if you got nothing else, that's $25 to $50 million. How is that not good for the country?
On that question, Mr. Wilson, we come to an end. Thank you so very much. And I think congratulations are in order.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your service to the country, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Wilson.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Godfrey Enius.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening to our program today, and we hope you found it illuminating. Good evening, everyone.